The night was thick, suffocating, the kind of darkness that made you feel like the world had swallowed you whole. Vanessa stepped into the hidden room beneath Joey's garage, her heart pounding like a war drum. The air was thick with dust, the faint smell of decay lingering in the corners, as though the room itself was haunted by secrets better left buried. Her flashlight flickered, casting erratic beams of light across the floor, where hundreds of photographs lay scattered, images of Marcel. But these weren't the happy memories she had shared with him. No, these were cold, calculated glimpses into a life snuffed out too soon. And then, there it was. A blood-stained knife, gleaming under the dim light like a cruel reminder of the truth Vanessa had never wanted to face. The weight of the evidence crushed her chest as she moved closer, her hand trembling as it reached for the cold steel. It was the very weapon that had ended Marcel's life, and it was in her hands now. The horror escalated when she found the crime scene report, half hidden in a drawer. The name of the murderer was clear, undeniable: Joey. The person she had trusted, the one she had loved, had been the one to end the life of the man who had meant everything to her. Her breath caught in her throat, the walls of the room closing in on her. This wasn't just a betrayal, it was a nightmare, a truth that twisted every memory she had of him into a sick joke. And then, the door creaked behind her, the unmistakable sound of a presence she hadn't heard in what felt like a lifetime. Joey. The man who had killed the man she had loved. The man who had shattered everything. His eyes met hers, empty of guilt, cold as ice. Vanessa didn't need to ask. She already knew. He had known she would find out. Now there was no escape. The game had changed. And Joey was the one pulling the strings. The night was thick with fog, casting an eerie silence over the Dupree estate. Vanessa moved like a shadow, slipping through the shadows of the mansion, the weight of the secret she carried pressing down on her chest like a boulder. The old mansion loomed ominously before her, its walls seemingly harboring centuries of secrets, whispers of betrayal that had yet to be revealed. She had come here with one purpose: to confront the truth. But as she stepped into the hidden room after Joey's garage, she realized that the truth she was about to uncover would tear her world apart. Her heart pounded as she switched on the flashlight, its beam trembling as it skimmed over the floor. The room was a mess, littered with photographs, some old, some recent. They were all of Marcel, the man who had once meant everything to her. As the light flickered across the images, each one seemed to mock her, telling a story she hadn't been prepared to hear. From when he was alive, vibrant and full of promises, to the last night he was seen alive, each photo felt like a nail being driven into her chest. The last photo, the one taken on the night of his disappearance, stood out in the middle of the others like a cruel reminder. She let out a soft gasp, moving closer to the floor, where the faint outline of blood stains still marred the tiles. It was all coming together now, every piece of the puzzle falling into place, and it was worse than she could have ever imagined. On the ground, the cold steel of a blood-stained knife gleamed under the dim light. The blade was slightly curved, almost as if it had been waiting for her to find it, to confront the brutal truth. Her stomach churned as she bent down, her trembling hand brushing against the hilt. The weapon that had ended Marcel's life, and now she was holding it in her hands, as though she were somehow complicit in his death. But the truth was far worse than just holding a murder weapon. Vanessa's breath caught in her throat when she spotted the document tucked into a drawer. It was a crime scene report, its edges yellowed with age, but the name of the murderer written clearly on the page was what caught her eye. Joey. Her mind reeled as the implication hit her like a freight train. Joey, the man she had trusted, the one who had held her when she was broken, when no one else was there. He was the one who had taken Marcel's life. Her mind refused to accept it, but the evidence was undeniable. Her legs gave way beneath her as the weight of the realization pressed down on her chest. She sat back on the cold floor, her hands shaking uncontrollably as she tried to process what she had just uncovered. Joey. The person she had confided in, the person who had sworn loyalty to her, had betrayed her in the worst possible way. It was incomprehensible. Then, as though the world itself had decided to trap her, the sound of a door creaking open reached her ears. The floorboards groaned under the weight of someone's presence, and she turned, her breath frozen in her chest. Standing in the doorway, silhouetted by the dim light from the hallway, was Joey. His gaze locked onto hers, empty of remorse, cold as steel. For a moment, time seemed to stretch, the silence thick and suffocating. Vanessa's mind raced, her heart hammering in her chest. Joey didn't speak, didn't need to. His presence alone conveyed everything, everything she feared. He knew she knew. The secret was out, and now, there was no turning back. He had been in control up until now, pulling the strings, playing the game. But now, with her discovery, the power had shifted. Or had it? Was he still in control? Vanessa's world spun around her as she tried to understand how far Joey had taken his manipulation. How long, she finally managed, her voice barely above a whisper, as if speaking too loudly would shatter her. Joey's lips curled into a smirk, one that didn't reach his eyes. "You've always known, Vanessa," he said coolly, as though everything he had done was part of some twisted plan. "You just didn't want to believe it." Her mind screamed in protest. She wanted to lash out, to scream at him, to demand answers, but the words wouldn't come. There was nothing to say. She had seen the evidence. Joey had killed Marcel. Her closest friend, the person who had shared so many intimate moments with her, was now a cold-blooded murderer. And yet, there was no sign of remorse in his eyes. No guilt. Just cold indifference. Vanessa's pulse quickened. She realized that this was no longer about finding out the truth. It wasn't about justice for Marcel. This was about survival. Her survival. She had stumbled upon something that Joey could not let her walk away from. She was a threat to his carefully constructed world, a world built on lies, manipulation, and murder. "I'm not going to let you walk away from this," she said, her voice gaining strength as the adrenaline surged through her veins. The fear, the disbelief, they melted away, replaced by a primal urge to fight for her own life. She wasn't going to let him take this from her. Not now. Joey took a step forward, his eyes narrowing. "You think you can stop me? You think you've won?" Vanessa's breath hitched as she realized the magnitude of the danger she was in. This wasn't just a confrontation over the truth. This was a battle for control. Joey had made the first move, but she was determined to make the last. "You won't get away with it, Joey. You won't," she said through gritted teeth, standing up, her eyes locked onto his. The room seemed to close in around her, the walls pressing in as the weight of the situation became clear. She had to act. Now. Joey's expression shifted, the coldness giving way to something darker. "You're not in a position to make demands, Vanessa," he said, his voice low, like a snake ready to strike. The tension between them crackled like electricity in the air. Vanessa's heart raced as she realized that if she didn't do something, she wouldn't make it out of here alive. Joey was prepared to eliminate anyone who stood in his way. And that included her. But Vanessa wasn't going down without a fight. Her mind was racing, calculating her next move. In the quiet of the room, amid the shadows of betrayal, she knew she was at a crossroads. She could either fold, cower in fear, and allow Joey to destroy her, or she could fight back, even if it meant her life. But what other choice did she have? In that moment, Vanessa's resolve hardened. She wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for Marcel's life, for the truth, and for her own soul. The battle had begun, and there was no turning back. Joey had underestimated her. And that, she realized, would be his biggest mistake. The room seemed to grow colder, the darkness swallowing them both whole. The final confrontation was about to unfold, and Vanessa would stop at nothing to ensure she emerged victorious. It was a matter of life and death, and in this game of betrayal and survival, she would make sure that Joey paid the price for his sins. The seconds stretched into an eternity, and for a brief moment, time seemed to freeze. Vanessa stood at the edge of a precipice, her body trembling, heart pounding so fiercely it seemed impossible to ignore. The weight of the truth was unbearable. Joey, the man she had trusted, the one who had once whispered promises of forever in her ear, was now standing before her, a cold, emotionless figure. The room around them was filled with the ghosts of secrets, betrayal, and bloodshed, and she could feel it suffocating her, wrapping around her throat like an iron vice. She wanted to scream. She wanted to run. But she couldn't. Not anymore. Joey's eyes never wavered. His silence was more damning than anything he could have said. He didn't need to explain. She had already seen it, the knife, the blood, the crime scene report. He knew she knew, and in that silence, in that dead gaze, he found no need to say another word. It was as though he had already decided the outcome of this moment. Vanessa was just another piece in his game. A pawn. But the problem with pawns was that they had a way of turning the game around when they were cornered. Her hands clenched into fists. A surge of rage flooded her chest, filling her veins like molten lava. Betrayal had never felt this sharp, this suffocating. For so long, she had trusted him. She had let him in, shared her darkest secrets with him, built a life together, and this was the reward. The brutal truth that Joey, the man who had promised her the world, was the one who had taken it all away. "You never thought I would find out, did you?" Vanessa's voice cut through the thick silence, sharp and dangerous. The tremor in her words was gone, replaced by a cold fury that seemed to radiate from her very core. She was no longer the woman who had walked into this room a few moments ago. She had been reshaped by the brutal reality of what she had uncovered. "You thought you could keep this from me forever, keep me in the dark, while you destroyed everything I cared about." Joey took a slow, deliberate step forward. His face remained unreadable, but his eyes flickered with something, a hint of recognition, perhaps? A silent acknowledgement that the tables had turned. He reached into his coat pocket, his movements slow and controlled, as though he were deciding what his next move would be. Vanessa's breath caught in her throat as she braced herself, but she didn't step back. She wasn't going to run this time. She wasn't going to let him take another thing from her. "Vanessa." Joey's voice was soft, almost coaxing, as though they were still playing the same old game. "You don't have to do this. We can still walk away from this, you and me. Together." She laughed, the sound bitter and hollow, echoing through the empty room. "Together?" She shook her head, her eyes narrowing. "You killed Marcel, Joey. You took him away from me, and you think we can just pretend like nothing happened? No. This is the end. There's no going back." Her pulse was still racing, her body trembling with the adrenaline of the confrontation, but in the pit of her stomach, something else was beginning to form. Something she hadn't expected to feel, a sense of resolve. She didn't need him anymore. She had lived through the nightmare of betrayal, and now, she was ready to face it head-on. The fear that had once paralyzed her was gone, replaced by something far more powerful, the unshakable will to survive. Joey's expression faltered for the briefest moment, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. But it was gone almost instantly, replaced by the same cold, calculating demeanor he always wore. He wasn't going to let her get away. Not without a fight. "You're making a mistake," Joey warned, his voice low, dangerous. "You don't know what you're up against. This isn't just about Marcel. This is about you and me. This is about everything we've built. If you walk away now, you'll lose everything. You think I won't destroy you just like I destroyed him?" Vanessa's hands were shaking, but it wasn't fear that made her tremble now. It was the rush of everything falling into place. The lies. The manipulation. The murder. All of it had led her here. And now, there was no going back. You don't have control anymore, she said, her voice growing stronger with every word. I see you now, Joey. I see who you really are. And I'm not afraid of you. Not anymore. There was a long, tense silence between them, a standoff of wills. But Vanessa wasn't backing down. She couldn't. She had already seen too much, learned too much. Joey had already destroyed everything she had loved. Now, he was going to have to face the consequences. He wasn't going to get away with it. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The air between them crackled with tension, as if the entire room were holding its breath. And then, like the final pieces of a shattered glass falling into place, Vanessa made her decision. She wasn't going to be his victim. She wasn't going to let him win. She was going to expose him, to make sure everyone knew what he had done, to make him pay for what he had taken from her. As the darkness of the room closed in around them, Vanessa felt an overwhelming sense of clarity. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for Marcel. For justice. For the truth that had been buried beneath layers of lies. And in that moment, she knew one thing for certain: Joey's reign of terror was over. And with that thought, she took the first step toward her freedom, toward the light at the end of the tunnel. No matter what it took, she was going to make sure he paid the price.